Hello, once again, dear viewers, and welcome back to another Moonflower Tarot reading. And today I'm actually going to be focusing more on uh, my own personal story. I was actually given a message the other night um, during a phase of deep transformation and healing to actually give my own personal experience when it comes to doing a lot of inner work, shadow healing. And so a lot of that is going to be brought up and coming through today. And now I am um, still in the process of working through a cold. So that's all that's been going on lately. But especially in the collective, I am feeling a lot of transformation happening. A lot of need to go within, do some almost reflecting back on what matters most in our own lives and our own paths forward spiritually, and a lot to do with community and the connections we make with others has been being brought up to my attention. And I have noticed that there's a trend recently within my own community, my own spiritual work, and other areas and other people I have been speaking to, and a lot of it is based on ancestral lineage and almost the wounds that we carry within ourselves that we are now transmuting and healing during a time of a great um, collective shift. Um, so I appreciate everyone who has been has been here since the beginning too. And if you're new here, thank you so much for joining me today. Um, Today is a little bit of a special day because I am kind of diving more into um, a lot more of my personal work with this. Over the last 4 years, I started this transformation cycle of doing a lot of deep healing and cleansing and generational karma work, as well as past life regression. And, every once in a while, it does take a toll on us as, spiritual beings working through a lot of these things, releasing a lot of layers of what is essentially not just our own pain, but the soul's pain, our ancestors' pain. And it also reflects what's going on in society. And a lot of you I know have been going through this as well. So I really hope that um, the stories I tell about my experiences and the advice I relay from the divine help you along this journey as well and bring you a little bit of clarity or at least some form of divine guidance. Because one of the most important things that I found healing for my own journey had to do with shared experiences. So when I was working with, or at least exploring different avenues in the spiritual community, it really was important to reach out to a lot of people who were either tapping into this gift or already working within, um, community spaces, had their own business, because that's one of the things I was encouraged to do was do a lot of networking early on. And this was like even 3 years ago, I was basically pursuing something similar to when I was guided to start this channel, and just being with a lot of people who were in the spiritual community who had gone through what I went through was very much a saving grace for me. And never underestimate the healing that comes with a shared experience. And the messages coming through today, I'm also going to seek advice for anyone's here. I'm hearing some of you are actually almost shifting timelines because Spirit just said we're dealing with alternate dimensions, which in a weird way, like shifting timelines is energetically, and it's a very esoteric concept because you're not physically like jumping from one universe to another. You are just shifting almost the paradigm of your own world and your own life. So the types of people you used to associate from like something from a previous healing cycle or a previous energetic coding is going to change dramatically. And even in my own experience, the types of connections I made, even 1 or 2 years prior, are radically different from some of the connections I make currently. And a lot of it has to do with my own perception of what I provide in any given relationship or any given environment. And the inner work and healing I chose to do moving on from what was essentially a very long lifetime of being in a people pleasing, dispowered empath mentality and having shadows of almost like victimhood and martyrdom, not really realizing that I had a choice to step away because my worth was based on how much I could give into um, a situation or relationship rather than a mutual exchange. And that's not uncommon for those of us, if you identify with someone who came from a similar situation, those of us who have to learn those boundaries and learn to almost break free from those cycles on our own. And a lot of it has to do with just a mindset shift. So a lot of you, if you've been working on that, this is confirmation that you are shifting timelines very, very, very dramatically almost. It's going to feel like you're living a completely new life from here on. Because actually February 11th like keeps popping up clearly in my mind, and for some of you that might have been a significant date either this year, last year, or possibly even next year. And on a lot of my readings, the Justice card is also coming up, and I feel like that's a collective thing as well. So what came up recently that inspired me to do a little bit of a my story time had to do with a dream sequence I had. And now um I do a lot of my inner work and healing through my dreams. I have always been a vivid dreamer, and basically very passionate about like psychology, the psychology of dreams. I also kind of was had a had a kind of interest in human development and psychology. I've helped people through different situations, um, and I've studied it for my own healing, and incorporating that with my spiritual work actually has saved me a lot of time and energy, really. And I do appreciate that not everyone has the capacity to have like that type of um, almost like I wouldn't say mind, but the fact that I have the capacity to do that, and if any of you also, like, that is a very, very powerful tool to incorporate into any of your spiritual practices or healing work. Because the subconscious mind, it really does show us where we might be limiting ourselves, where there's healing to be done. So for the past 4 years, I incorporated like my spiritual work and communicating with my higher self, God, and any of my ancestors and spiritual beings. I would always call upon them to enter into my dreams and give me guidance. And when I first started this journey, it was very clear I was new to it. I didn't know what to expect, and as many people as I sought out who were experts in the field, I was still approaching it with a beginner's mindset. And I had just studied enough of psychology and knew enough about the human mind to be able to process what was essentially going on when I was first trying to open that relationship dynamic between me, God, and my the more higher spiritual frequencies. But it really took a lot of time and patience with myself to be able to basically build a rapport with God, and setting boundaries and being able to understand fully the extent of my gift. Um, and for some of you, if you do also use dreams to process, you know, to process what's going on within your emotional body or your subconscious, or if you're just on the spiritual path and you're doing this healing work, keeping a dream journal is one of the biggest suggestions I think spirit has for you. Keeping a dream journal, or even just keeping a journal in general to keep track of what you're feeling during this whatever healing you're doing, or even spiritual awakenings that might be happening. It's very important. Um, so you don't want to miss out on that opportunity as well when these gifts are breaking through to you, or you're finding like you're trying to manifest certain things. Like, definitely keep track of that, because one of the most like beneficial things to me even keeping track of my dreams like has to do with exactly what what I experienced last night. And I basically, when I have to go through a cycle of transmuting old energy and healing, I will have what I call, I guess, pass throughs and resolution dreams. So it's like the example that came up the other night was back in October when I was kind of at the tail end of doing a lot of deep healing shadow work, and I'm working actually through trauma therapy and counseling. Before that, I basically had like 3 or 4 months of back to back nonstop like flashbacks and a lot of breakdowns, which is actually completely normal because my nervous system, my body knew it was safe to do so, and I had enough support around me, and I had people I could talk to, where it's just like I just knew that I was safe to do so. And so it was the first time in my life I really experienced that. And it was a lot of releasing. And I ended up getting extremely sick in October. But a dream basically um, that I had to do with a lot of healing from a previous lifetime that was extremely relevant to everything I was facing in this one. And that's not uncommon, especially for soul work and healing. Like, we do repeat the same cycle until we end it, whether it's in this life, a previous life, or the next life. It's just as long as a soul needs, it will take that time until it gets to a point where it breaks the cycle. And because I had already set intentions basically back in 2019 to break a lot of different cycles within my own family and myself, I was coming to almost like a transitional phase of my life where I had gotten sick from a lot of the inner work I was doing, but there was one more thing that needed to be addressed, and it had to do with basically me being here with you today and channeling these messages. I used to come from a place and time where I was in danger of being myself on a lot of levels. And when I was given an opportunity to take a leadership position, to be almost like a leader in a community, I turned it down because I was so fearful of being judged and perceived differently. I was so fearful of letting everyone down. And that kept me stuck in this never ending cycle of just settling with people who kind of unfortunately used me, mistreated me, and kind of underestimated my abilities. But because I was so super terrified of what gifts I had, because I was very very in tune with God, and like I guess I kind of had I wouldn't say it was a priest, but I had that sort of vibe where I was extremely devoted and connected to um, the faith of my ancestors, and I carried that with me in my work. But there was just a lot that I had to work through and process, and realize that all the excuses I made as to why I could not lead like no longer serve me, and they weren't true. It was just an excuse I made. And so during that month when I was at my sickest and I was doing a lot of the internal work to heal, that was when I got the basically the like inspired action to at least begin considering pursuing, like starting up this channel, a different way of approaching the spiritual path that I wanted to take. Because I was spending a lot of time trying to find myself, trying to find my voice, what I wanted to do. I was in certain environments that didn't necessarily support me, and I needed to walk away from them to be able to do the healing work and inner work. And that's the fascinating thing about divine timing and doing a lot of this work and the power of manifestation is that it does take a lot of time. But when you are energetically aligned with the life that you had set in motion to live, it just kind of happens. And so 2 months after I had all that stuff happen is when I started receiving messages of, you're going to sit down and you're going to record these videos and you're going to channel messages and you're just going to approach it with a beginner's mindset. You're going to take everything you learned 3 years ago, everything you did that failed and everything you did that succeeded, and you're just going to take it one step at a time and have all these options there. And do your work, do your research, open up to what possibilities may be, because the biggest reason I wanted to do this in the first place was to be a light for the community and help others through whatever struggles they might be going through. And so basically the resolution to that dream in the end of October happened kind of under the same circumstances, but in a very, very like end of a cycle way, where I was coming down with this flu or the cold, and I was like so cold. I was feverish. I was like praying to God to get me through this, and I just had this very cathartic and illuminating experience where I saw myself at the other end of that October dream sequence, where I was being myself. I was not afraid. I was not afraid of the opinions of others. And I saw this interesting divine unity between my current life and my previous incarnation. It's like my soul was finally able to rest within itself, and everything that I had experienced, all the pain, all the karmic damage and lessons that like I wasn't able to learn then are just here with me now. And I basically saved the life of that part of my soul, because what I did was I overcame my fears. I listened to exactly the guidance I was given, and my intention really is just to heal, and God knows that, and he wants to help all of us who set those types of intentions to make it through. Like whatever's meant for us will always be ours. And so he was putting me on that path esoterically and energetically to get to a point where he was just like, to end the cycle, you just sit down and you just speak and don't worry about all that stuff. I'm like, I have a plan. I have an idea of where I can go with this. I'm not gonna like go in here blind. I'm gonna do my due diligence, but then co-creating with the universe means that I just trust that guidance and having that balance of divine masculine and feminine energies. So even like 5 months later, from where the time where I was healing a part of myself that had needed to be healed, like over 3 lifetimes ago, because it's funny, this incarnation, oddly enough, happened like 3 incarnations ago. But they are the ones I was like closest to, at least spiritually. Growing up, I connected with them more. And yeah, that was kind of a thing with me. Like I grew up very quickly. And because of the nature of my environment, I tapped into a lot of those like past life regressions quite early on without really realizing what it was. Because I mean, at the time I couldn't, until like 2021, when I was like almost a year into healing from my family, and I wasn't even considering a spiritual path. I was literally like, so I want to be a writer, or I want to be a freelance graphic designer, and I was pursuing that. And then all of a sudden, God does a complete like 180 and reveals so many hidden truths to me. And I'm like, I can't deny that, because it just reminded me of where I came from and the closeness and relationship that I did have growing up, and what my passion was really for, and what brought me the most joy. And so seeing that sense of catharsis really does kind of give me a sense of peace and hope for whatever happens next in my life, because essentially I was shown I broke a cycle. Like all the grieving I went through, in the end, it mattered. The pain and the suffering I went through is not going to matter anymore, because I'm going to be so detached and far removed from it that starting a new life is going to be like completely new for me. And so I'm seeing that for many of you, you were possibly starting a new timeline in a very similar way. And so a piece of advice I have for you is just stick through it, keep going, whatever your dreams are, whatever your manifestations are. Sometimes, these issues might take years to resolve, and that's okay. Stick through it, because it's worth it in the end. Because I'm literally telling you, I set manifestations for a lot of like high ticket items that were mostly inner work. And yes, high ticket items is literally shadow work. Like manifesting stuff in the physical is kind of easy breezy for me. Like I've done that a lot in my life, but doing the healing inner work, that's not easy, especially when you kind of feel like you're living in a bubble or like a shadow of your ancestors, and you don't know what's going on, and you might not have the help and support you need from the people outside of you. And that's why it's important for everyone in the community to at least speak their truth. Don't sugarcoat it. Put yourself out there. Write down your story. Write down the lessons you learned, because that's important too. Keep these stories alive and process this information, because you are moving on to a better time. And I like to use myself as an example, because I just know I had so many challenges to overcome. And I like to always say, if I can do it, you can too. Anyone can literally do this. And I want to be that living proof to, to just be that shining light. And I think many of you here too want to be that as well. Because like God always sends in reconfirmations about the directions he is suggesting we go in. And a year before I even started posting on this channel, I did receive a message about basically beginning it back in literally December of 2023. Excuse me for a second. I so Yeah, in the December of 2023, I literally received a vision about doing exactly this. He literally showed me walking down a street in the middle of spring, um, just being this very high vibrational, happy go lucky person, and just going out there and like doing like divination. And he literally specifically like was like, you start up this channel and you speak your truth and you do this healing work, and just leave the rest to me, even if it means I have to kind of find, you know in between cycles, extra work to kind of to be able to build my life and support myself, even if it means like seeking out outside sources and networking with other, spiritual healers and advisors as well. It was just one of those things that I had to learn, that he kept reminding me that when there's an intention and something set in motion, God always aligns us with it and provides for us. So I knew that this was what I was going to do a year before it happened, but I wasn't ready yet. He was preparing me for when I was able to begin the cycle. And a lot of it just boiled down to me doing the inner work and shadow work. Because one of the biggest complications I did actually find before pursuing a more spiritual career like 3 or 4 years ago is I did meet a lot of people who I was in alignment at the time, who were, I would say, wounded healers. And you find that a lot in different, practices. We've in mental health and healthcare in general. Like there are people who are going to approach what is essentially a healing position as someone who is unhealed. Excuse me. Um, And that kind of contributes to a lot of reoccurring societal pains, because if you are a wounded healer and wounded in a way where you almost project onto your patients or your clients, like I had experienced that a lot in like the mental health career, and which is why I became very passionate about helping out my friends a little bit more and just being an advocate. It was mostly volunteer, because I just had seen the damage that was done and I knew enough about it. I wanted to help. But then entering into the spiritual path, like I went in blind, but I just saw the same reoccurring patterns. And I kind of made the mistake of associating with people who, to put it quite bluntly, like sabotaged me. And they might have done it unconsciously, because that's the important and powerful thing to remember about when you're entering into a spiritual healing energetic work career, because the evil eye is a lot more potent and intense with people who identify as spiritual healers and I guess magicians in general. And I had people take advantage of me almost without me knowing, and I wasn't revealed until much later that I had a lot of, I wouldn't even say copycats, like blatantly taking what was mine. And I had been warned about associating with them a little bit before, but I was still in the mindset of, well, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, they have to be good people. They're working with God and angels. And it was like I kind of had this very childlike naivety to me, which did end up causing me to learn a very valuable lesson. And while I don't hold any grudges, in fact, I literally just have moved on from it so quickly that I realized it was more of a lesson I needed to learn. And I prayed for each one of the people I had to kind of let go of and interact with. And since then, I've met a decent amount of a good people in the spiritual community who are just very, very loving, unconditionally high vibrational teachers and healers. And so it just, in a sense, it made me appreciate, the people who practice what they preach more. And it gave me more of an incentive and peace of mind to become that as well and encourage that in the community, because there was this mindset of competition that I felt was incredibly inappropriate, but it is very much a conditional to the human spirit at this point in time in our history. But the most important thing I think to remember is that listening to God, it is definitely one of the most valuable things you can do when you are moving forward and evolving. Um, Especially since he kind of knows the way to our um, I guess destination, the manifestations we are asking for a little bit better, because he can see outside of ourselves. He can see the people who are at play behind the scenes, and we are all working together, as one soul collective in the universe. And so anybody here doing the shadow work and inner work and healing, like, I applaud you and I'm so proud of you. And just remember, the universe and God loves you unconditionally. No matter what might be happening in your life, you are worthy of this time and energy and the patience to get through a lot of this inner work and healing. Because I hadn't done anything wrong by not immediately starting this up as soon as I got that direction. I was just literally being prepared for when it did happen, and when it was time, it just happened naturally. And that's something to keep in mind. Give yourself the grace and patience to get there, and just let these things resolve and let God carry you, because you're going to find yourself in a better space of inner unity and networking with a lot more people who align with you, and maybe even classify themselves as being highly evolved spiritual people, and knowing the importance of unconditional love and the healing path. And I guess the advice I have coming in for you is definitely try to keep a shadow work journal if you're just beginning this or pursuing this. Give yourself the time and patience to follow through with any of these goals, and just just keep in mind, I started this in 2021. I literally wrote an entire list before I even knew what I was getting into. I mean, back then I didn't really understand the implications of the entire workload I would be facing, because I didn't just have one or two goals I wanted to meet. I had just generational karma, shadow work, opening to my past lives, doing a lot of trauma work, healing, discerning who was and was not healthy for me, unlearning patterns of behavior, understanding my own um, pre-existing conditions, my own mental health and well-being. And it's like I had like 10 or 20 things, 10 or 12 things initially. And as I kind of check things off of that list, I added more on. So 3 or 4 years of shadow work healing, like, sometimes is not enough, especially if you are deep into a healing cycle or doing trauma work. It takes a lot of time, but it is so worth it. You are worth it. We are all worth it. And I think as a collective, we are all coming into this place of better unity. The more we see stuff on the outside becoming a little bit more chaotic and oppressive, it almost drives us towards each other to create this bond within a community, and it drives out a lot of the darkness that might be, clouding our own awareness. So just always keep that in mind. Like, you are moving forward very, very, very clearly into a brighter future and moving on from a very almost tumultuous past. And even if you are continuing to feel like there's a lot going on in the present moment, like, this will pass. Well, life has its own balance and cycles, and the judgment card actually has been appearing a lot to me in my dreams, mostly to do with like a lot of these karmic cycles coming to an end. So it is very important to just be reminded that doing a lot of work with the community, surrounding yourself with people who support you, and knowing that like God always has our best intentions at heart. And sometimes divine intervention is like the way forward, but you still are making a conscious effort to speak the truth and to be aligned with your highest good, because we are all coming together now as a community a lot more so than ever, and that does bode well for us, I think. Like, um my archangel Sandalphon just said the kids are gonna be okay. Like, you kids are gonna be okay. It's like, yeah, have faith in that. We are making it better for the next generation, and even the generations like now or coming after us. Like, they're going to be so much better off because of the work we put in now. And that's the whole point of doing a lot of this, is to make this world better off than, when we came into it. And every single person like deserves to have this beautiful world, to experience the joy of existing. And to take that away from the people and to take freedom away is, I think our souls as a collective is not having it now, and that's a good sign. And God literally just has our best interests at heart. He has our back. So I think that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much once again for tuning in and sticking through. I really appreciate you being here. Like, comment, and subscribe. The support you give this channel is very, very helpful. And I'm so happy once again to be here, to be that light that I was guided to be. And, hopefully, you take this guidance with you as you will, but definitely journal, 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 and, come back to them later, 3 or 4 months, and you'll see definitely going to have a lot of improvement. So have a nice day.